Our history is pretty messy and missing. No one really knows where we came from or how we ended up here, but what we do know is that people have done some weird stuff. Just 100 years ago, people actually paid to see other people's deformities. Today, that would get you arrested instantly, and rightfully so. But back then, circus freaks were an actual attraction, and people would travel incredible distances just to witness someone with a physical abnormality. So, join us for today's video as we tell you about the 15 circus show freaks that actually existed. Number 15, the skeleton dude. Charles Arthur Maule, or as better known as the Great Artie Atherton, came into the world in 1890, weighing just 2 pounds. He was so fragile that he spent his early years resting on a pillow, carried instead of walking. By 17, he still used crutches, but the circus saw something else: contrast. When he joined Barnum and Bailey in 1909, he weighed just 38 pounds and became the skeleton dude. During the off-season, he worked as a Chicago reporter. He later married Mary Jelly Mae Berkeley, a snake charmer who intentionally gained weight to emphasize their visual contrast. Together, they were a draw: the tiny man and his full-bodied wife. They had 2 healthy children and lived on the road. Artie denied rumors of starvation, insisting he just had unusually small bones. But circus life never protected anyone for long. In 1920, while visiting Michigan, he was struck by a car and died from internal injuries on the spot. He was buried as Charles Maule, but circus history remembers him as Skeleton Dude. Number 14, the Irish Giant. Patrick Cotter O'Brien was born in 1760 in County Cork, and he was said to be descended from ancient kings and at over 8 feet tall. While it was obviously fake, people almost believed it, like for real. He toured as the Bristol Giant, towering over crowds across Britain. Fame made him wealthy, but it came with fear. Scientists of the time robbed graves for skeletons, and Patrick knew his body would be next. Before his death in 1806, he demanded to be buried 12 feet deep, sealed in lead, and covered with rock so no one could dissect him. It didn't stop them. Workmen uncovered his coffin a century later, exposing his remains for study and photographs before reburying him. Even in death, curiosity followed him. Today, his boots sit in a museum, his story caught between science and spectacle. Patrick lived as a giant and died trying not to be one. But even buried beneath stone, the creepy world still looked down and still stared. Number 13, the Sicilian Fairy. Caroline Krachami's life was short, strange, and never truly her own. She came into the world in Palermo sometime around 1815, so tiny that she reportedly weighed just 1 pound. Even at her peak, she measured about 20 inches tall. People claimed she was 9 when she died, but later studies suggest she might have only been 3. Either way, she became the earliest known case of primordial dwarfism, and quickly, someone else's ticket to fame. In 1824, a man named Gilligan took her to London, pretending to be her father. He exhibited her under the name the Sicilian Dwarf. Caroline could speak fluent English and easily won over the public. But she was sick, always coughing, and no one cared enough to help. When she died, her real dad arrived too late. Gilligan vanished after trying to sell her corpse. Her skeleton ended up in the Hunterian Museum. She was used, abused, and displayed. Her voice is gone, but not her bones. Number 12, the Bearded Lady of Geneva. Josephine Bois de Chêne, better known as Madame Clofulia, was elegance wrapped in defiance. She was born in Switzerland and grew facial hair at a young age. She could have hidden it, so she styled it. By 8, she already had a soft beard. By her teens, she was touring Europe with her father, performing for royalty. Audiences expecting horror found poise. She dressed impeccably, spoke politely, and wore her beard like an ornament. At one show, she sculpted it to resemble Napoleon III's mustache. He was so amused, he gifted her a diamond. Josephine later married a painter, Fortune Clofulia, and continued touring under her married name. She never presented herself as a curiosity, only as a performer with grace and control. In a world obsessed with female perfection, she dared to be different and made that her art. There was no tragedy in her act, only confidence. Josephine didn't fight her reflection, she perfected it. Number 11. The heaviest man to walk unassisted. Robert Earl Hughes never asked to be a spectacle. He grew up in a small Missouri town and seemed like any other baby, until a bout of whooping cough as an infant caused his body to gain weight at a rate doctors couldn't explain. By adulthood, he weighed over 1,000 pounds but was still able to walk. People were stunned by his size, but Robert didn't hide. He leaned into it. With the help of his family, he toured the country with carnivals and fairs. He posed for photos, met crowds, and made a living doing what he could. At 27, he joined a full-time road show. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him purpose. As the years passed, his body began to wear down. Walking became harder. Chairs had to be built just to support him. In 1958, he got sick while touring in Indiana. Doctors couldn't transport him. He was treated in his trailer, but it wasn't enough. He was 32 when he passed, and the world noticed when he was gone. Number 10. Sia Khan. Sia was never meant to be remembered this way. He was a quiet boy from a rural town in southern Iran, growing up like anyone else, until something in his body changed. After the age of 6, his growth exploded. His arms stretched, his skull swelled, and the shape of his body turned strange and unmanageable. His family didn't know what to do. They were poor and desperate, so they started showing him off in public, hoping it would keep food on the table. By his early teens, he was being exhibited in Tehran. In 1933, doctors documented his condition as Proteus syndrome, estimating his height at over 8.5 feet. He struggled to support his head, which weighed nearly 6 kilograms. Then, Dr. Gorban arranged medical care in Shiraz. That's where Sia spent his final years, confined to a hospital bed. He died from pneumonia at just 25. His skeleton still stands in a glass, but the boy inside that frame never had a chance to grow up. Number 9. The man turning to stone. Charles S. Porter's life in New Haven began like anyone else's. He ran, played, and moved through childhood freely, until he didn't. At 13, something started to change. His limbs stiffened, his muscles locked. Slowly, his body began to harden from the inside out. Doctors diagnosed him with fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, a rare condition where soft tissue turns to bone. As his body betrayed him, the world turned him into a spectacle. Sideshow managers billed him as the man turning to stone. He didn't dance, speak, or entertain. He just sat there, frozen in pain, while crowds passed by. They looked at him like a curiosity, but he was still a boy inside, trying to hold on to whatever life he had left. As the years went by, his name disappeared from ads and tour schedules. Eventually, even his ending faded from record. But people never forgot the image of him. Still, solemn, unblinking. Charles wasn't putting on a show. He was simply surviving, one motionless day at a time. So, what do you think about him? Number 8. R.H. Hubbard. R.H. Skeets. Hubbard didn't have a stage presence. He had pain and a way of making it pay rent. His act wasn't about talent or flair. It was about endurance. He drove nails through his face, yanked carts with hooks in his eyelids, and never flinched. There were no clever monologues, no smiles to soften the blow. The crowd screamed, and he stood still. Posters called him the human blockhead or torture king, but those names belonged to the routine, not the man. His real life left little trace. A few scattered photos, maybe a name on a flyer, but no interviews, no memoir, no spotlight waiting backstage. He didn't chase sympathy or chase fame. Pain was something he could control when nothing else in life was. And control, for someone like Skeets, was everything. He didn't care what the audience thought. They could squirm, leave, laugh, or come back. He never reacted. He got paid, packed up, and moved on to the next town. Number 7. The White and Black Twins. Helen Ann and Henry Sedum Walker shared a home, a family, and a stage, but not the same skin. They were born to black parents in the 1860s, but Helen had albinism, light skin, pale hair, and striking blue-gray eyes, while Henry had his parents' darker complexion. That contrast made them marketable. Together, they toured as the White and Black Twins, traveling museum circuits from St. Louis to New Orleans. Their story was twisted for posters, with claims that they'd never been apart or were born in 1856. In reality, they were just siblings trying to help their family survive. Eventually, the records placed them in New York with their mother. Henry later vanished from documentation, last listed as a doorman. Helen married multiple times and continued working, even joining acts with other albino performers. Their story, mostly forgotten, was recently rediscovered by their descendants. Their graves were marked at last, and what once looked like a sideshow gimmick now stands as family history, reclaimed with pride. Number 6. Captain Fred Walters. Fred Walters spent his life doing what was asked of him. As a British soldier, he followed every order, every treatment, every rule, until a prescription did something no command ever could. After being given a silver-based compound for a medical issue, Fred's skin slowly turned blue. At first, it was subtle. Then it was unmistakable. The change cost him his place in the army. With nowhere else to go, he joined the American sideshow circuit. That's where he became known as the Blue Man. For decades, he toured across the country, always performing, always answering the same questions with patience. Most people never knew that the silver, which gave him his strange new identity, was still in his system, slowly poisoning him from the inside. He kept traveling. He kept smiling. He kept showing up, even as his health broke down. In 1923, the medal finally reached his heart. He died quietly, far from home, and the uniform was gone. Number 5. The Human Unicorn. The photo was grainy, almost ghost-like, a farmer in Manchukuo, China, with a horn curling out from the back of his skull. His name was Wang, and the image stunned the world. The story began when a Russian banker stumbled upon him in the 1930s and sent the picture to Robert Ripley, who turned it into a sensation. Ripley offered a reward for Wang's appearance in Believe It or Not, but Wang was never found again. Some said it was a keratin growth, hardened like a nail over decades. Others believed it was a tumor that had calcified. Whatever it was, the world never got a second look. No interviews, no exhibitions, just that single haunting image. A quiet man became a myth overnight. While sideshows thrived on exaggeration, Wang never profited, never performed, and never returned. All that remains is one photograph and a question that's never been answered. What really grew from that man's head, and why did he vanish? Number 4. Little Count Teddy. Theo Salem had a stage name, a signature bow tie, and something that separated him from most performers: complete creative control. Billed as Little Count Teddy, he stood around 3 feet tall, but filled theaters like he owned them. Born in 1885 in Louisville, Kentucky, Teddy didn't rely on shock or sympathy. His act blended satire, wit, and what he called laughology, a clever mix of storytelling and comedy rooted in sharp observation. He wrote his own lines. He booked his own shows. He refused to be reduced to a freak act. Posters poked fun. Smaller than Tom and still single. But Teddy didn't play into the joke. His goal wasn't to be looked at, it was to be heard. He used his voice, not his size, to win over crowds. Audiences left smiling, not staring. He didn't live off pity, and he didn't trade his dignity for applause. Teddy proved that presence isn't measured in height. It's built word by word, laugh by laugh, show after show. Number 3, the mule-faced woman. Grace McDaniels had to face cruelty before she ever learned how to speak. Born in 1888 with a severe facial condition, she was labeled and later branded by showmen as the mule-faced woman. But Grace didn't let shame write her story. She joined the circus circuit not for attention, but because it gave her a steady paycheck. That paycheck helped raise her son. It gave her some control. She knew the stares were coming. She saw the whispers before they started. But she kept showing up year after year. She married. She performed. She endured. Her son, born without her condition, brought his own pain, drinking, stealing, and using her earnings as his safety net. Grace never lashed out. She kept working, even when the crowd offered no kindness. "I don't need their pity," she once said. "I just need their money." Grace died in 1958 with her dignity intact. The posters may have mocked her, but her strength was never for sale. Number 2, William Henry Johnson. William Henry Johnson grew up in Liberty Corner, New Jersey, but the man people came to know as Zip was the invention of someone else entirely. Once P.T. Barnum got involved, William's life became a performance. They shaved his head to a point, dressed him in fur, and locked him in a cage. They called him the What Is It and the Missing Link. Each show began with a screech and ended with him dragging a violin across strings for uneasy laughs. Was he microcephalic? Maybe. But many believed he knew exactly what he was doing. He performed for decades across the US and Europe, never stepping too far out of character. Some say his final words to his sister were, "Well, we fooled 'em for a long time, didn't we?" Whether that was pride or resignation, it was his. William was a star and also a human. Number 1, Lobster Boy. Grady Stiles Jr. was born in 1937 with ectrodactyly, a rare condition that fused his fingers and toes into claw-like shapes. People called him Lobster Boy. But this wasn't a one-off anomaly. Ectrodactyly had run in the Stiles family since 1840. His father, also a performer, brought Grady into the sideshow at 7. He used a wheelchair but had incredible upper body strength, which only added to his mystique. Off stage, though, Grady's life unraveled. He drank heavily, turned violent, and terrorized his family. In 1978, the night before his daughter's wedding, he shot her fiancée point blank. He confessed and was convicted, but because no prison could accommodate his condition, he got probation. Years later, his estranged wife and her son hired a teenager to kill him. In 1992, Grady was shot dead in his home. Some called it justice. Others saw tragedy. The fame, the disability, the circus, it had all turned him into something no stage could ever truly explain. If you found this video joyful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content like this. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see soon in the next one.